Hello, good morning, everyone. Hello, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, sir.
I can't see your faces. I can't see your faces. I'm just seeing your names. Testimony, Patrick Joy. What happened? You didn't activate start your video. Let's see your faces. Okay. But anyway, so long as you can hear me, it's still okay. But seeing your faces has to do with maybe when we want to begin to and have some practical demonstrations of what we are doing. Okay, I can see you. Why are you putting on your mask? This is spoken English because when you want to articulate and how to teach how to articulate, I want to see the movement of your lips. So if you put on your mask now, you're not in the science class now. It is spoken English. You're welcome. Testimony. Well, where is your location?
Oshogo.
Oh, that's nice. It's okay. It's a pleasure meeting you. As we are waiting for others to come, we will want to start. You are welcome. I'm happy you're able to. When I send the email messages, about 60, I was informed in my mail that about 68 were not delivered because the mails were not active. You are about 225 in the class. Which is your course? What course are you studying? Testimony.
English.
English. No, what course? Is it BA English or BA Ed English?
Oh, BA English.
BA English, all right, it's okay. You are welcome. Others will be joining one by one, and I'll be admitting them. This course, like you know, is spoken English, ENG141, spoken English. What is the essence, what's the aim of the course? It is meant to expose you to what spoken English is all about, like we are communicating now. What is the essence of communicating in spoken English? How do you articulate the sounds of English? How do you combine sounds to form syllables, to form words? How do you articulate these words in English? And when you talk about speaking skills, what do we mean by speaking skills? What level of skill are you expected to have at this point in time in your career, in your academic career? I hope you can hear me. You can hear me, can't you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh yeah, don't mute yourself again, except I mute you. No, so if we look at the structure of spoken English, let's first take a look at I want you to take a look at the detailed course material itself. Do you have a copy of the course material before you?
No, I know it is, sir.
You're supposed to have at least a copy now. You're supposed to have a copy, the soft copy at least. What are you using to connect with us here? Is it your phone? Is it your Android phone?
No, I'm using my PC, sir.
Your what?
My PC.
So you should be able to download the soft copy into your PC now. Download the soft copy so that when we open it up, I was actually going to open up this share my screen and then go ahead and open up the course material itself, but not to worry. I was actually going to explain to you via the course material, the aim and objectives of the course. If you check out the course material, you will see the detailed aims and objectives of the course, what it says to expose you to the rudimentary knowledge of spoken English, the sounds that make up spoken English, and the kind of English we are studying in National Open University of Nigeria is a British English. The British English is a bit similar to the American English, but there are fundamental differences. Even in pronunciation and in writing and spelling, there are fundamental differences. What you are doing here, what we are teaching you is a British version of the English language, the British variety of the English language. Because come to think of it, America was colonized by Britain, and even though Americans don't agree that their English is a variety of British English, it is. you know. So now spoken English as a course is a 3 credit unit course. Is one of the very few 100 level courses that is 3 credit unit. It is made 3 credit unit because of the technicalities involved in the course. We're not only I want to let me remove some people from here. Maybe they don't know that I'm coming.
You're 5 now.
Mute all. Let me mute everybody. No. Yeah. I've muted everybody. I'm sure you can hear me. When the time comes, I can unmute you guys because some are just making so much noise and they are disturbing my concentration on my work. When I talked about spoken English and the aims and objectives of the course, not only to expose you to the sounds of English, the consonant and vowel sounds that are usually combined in syllables to form words and then to construct sentences. You're going to see what the vowels of English are, the letters of the alphabet that represent the vowel and the consonants of English. The sounds of English are not letters of the alphabet. Although the vowels and consonants of English have orthographical representation in the letters of the alphabet, but they are different from the letters of the alphabet. The letters of the alphabet are just a guide to how to write the sounds of English. Do you understand? All right. So one other aim of exposing you to the course itself is to train you on how to become good models, especially for those of you who are in the Bachelor of Education English program. I'm sure you are aware that you are being trained to train, you are being trained to teach other people, maybe the secondary school, primary school students who are learning English. You know, so I would expect you to go the extra mile by even taking the time out to search for resources online. Of course, there are links that will be provided for you to follow so you can get additional supplementary resources online. Okay. The first thing we're going to learn here is the fundamental differences between the spoken language and written language. Because I'm sure you know by now, at this point in time in your academic career, you are aware of the fact that language has 2 dimensions to it: the spoken version of the language and the written version of the language. Now, and I'm also sure you know that spoken English is different from written English. Before we start talking about the sounds of English, the stress pattern, what have you, the syllable structure, we have to understand these fundamental differences, you know, because it's so poignant, it's so important that you might have taken it for granted, but you can only control this. For instance, you can only control supernatural forces through the spoken language. You cannot write, can you write a letter to the devil, for instance, and he will listen to you? No. Man, God has given man that power of the speech. That's one of the qualities man has over other creatures that God has created. The ability to communicate in speech form. It's not as if other animals don't communicate, they do, but you call their communication language. It's neither spoken nor written, even if they are making sounds and what have you, but it can't be written. Human communication system is called language because it can be spoken and it can also be written. Of course, animals communicate, but you cannot call their communication language because it can't be written. I don't know whether you've seen any animal communication that has been written, you know, but human language can be spoken, it can be written. Now, today, I want us to quickly, for this particular segment, look at basically the fundamental differences between spoken language and written language, whether that language is an African language or it's English or it's Caribbean language. there are fundamental differences you should know. Those differences are highlighted in your course material, but I also want us to just look at them, and so you can ask questions and we can also get clarifications. Now, there are a few yardsticks we use to generally differentiate between spoken language and written language. These yardsticks come in different categories. One, skills. We talk about skills, you know. Spoken language involves speaking and listening skills. You listen, you speak. You see? So speaking and listening, or listening and speaking, before you learn how to speak, you must listen. And that is why you see a baby that is growing will spend 3 years, 3 or 2 years, listening to adults around him or her speaking. And then later, the baby begins to imitate. So to become a very good speaker of English, of any language, you must cultivate the habit of listening very well to that language. If you are ever going to be a model to other people who are learning English, spoken English, you must learn to listen to language that is spoken. Listen to how tones are used, listen to how sounds are articulated, listen to how words are pronounced, listen to how sentences are altered, and then you begin to improve yourself. So listening is a skill. And that is why if you take a look at your use of English and communication skills course, you have what you call use of English and communication skill 1 and use of English and communication skill 2. Although that course is structured along what you call receptive skills and productive skills, you know, not along spoken and written language. Now, when you are reading, you are receiving information. And when you are listening, like you are listening to me, you also receive information. We call those receptive skills. So I think GST 101, use of English communication skill, has to do with receptive skills of the language. While GST 102, where you are taught how to speak and how to write, that's producing information, is referred to as productive skills. But here in this course, when we talk about the skills as delineating spoken and written language, for the spoken language, we talk about the skills, acquiring the skills of listening and speaking. You first listen to the language like you are listening to me, and then you begin to speak, you begin to learn how to articulate words, begin to learn how to combine words in syllables, how to combine syllables to form words, and then listen to sounds, how sounds are articulated, the right way to articulate a given sound, the right way to pronounce a sound, the distinctive features of sounds, be they vowels, be they consonants, how you can divide them into different segments and units. You listen to all of these, and then you begin to practicalize by speaking. So when you talk about skills, the subset of skills, the spoken language fundamentally has to do with the listening skill and the speaking skill. You listen first, and then you learn how to speak. Why the written language has to do with the reading and the writing skill. You read what is written, and so that's why you see, to be a good writer, you are often encouraged to read good words that have been written. To be a good writer, you are encouraged to read good words that have been written. To be a good speaker, you learn how to listen to people who speak. You learn how to listen to news documentaries. You learn to listen to um, um, segments in the news where people are analyzing issues. You know, the way they're analyzing issues, the way they are stressing words, the way they are raising their voices, the way they are using intonation to convey meaning. You know, you learn this when you listen to people. So spoken language has to do with listening and then speaking. You listen first to what people are speaking, what people are saying, and then you now begin to articulate your own sounds, words, and then utter your sentences correctly. While written language has to do with reading and writing. And that's why we say speaking skills are called oracy skills, O-R-A-C-Y, oracy skills, while reading and writing skills are called literacy skills. So when you say somebody is not literate, when you say, why are you behaving like you are not literate at all, that means the person cannot read or write. It doesn't mean the person cannot speak. The person might be able to speak, listen and speak. But you see a lot of people, Nigerians who did not go to school, who are not educated, they can speak, they can communicate in English, they can listen to you and respond in English, but they might not be literate, because literacy has to do with ability to read and write correctly, ability to convey information through reading and writing skills, ability to communicate meaningfully through reading and writing. That has to do with written language. Another set of the difference has to do with the age. Spoken language came on board before written language. If you check your course material, it is stated there that the spoken language evolved. We use the word evolution. Spoken language evolved before written language. For those of you who are Christians, you read your Bible once again, you remember you were told that, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God spoke creation into being. And I mentioned at the beginning of this class that in fact, in the spirit realm, you can only control supernatural forces through the spoken words. So if you watch preachers, religious leaders who are gifted, they can do deliverance. They don't do deliverance through writing letter to the devil. No, you do it through the spoken word. So speech, spoken language evolved before the written language. For instance, in English, written English came into being when around 17 something, around the 18th century. But spoken English has been on for long. It has been on for long. People have been communicating in the language, but there has never been a documented version. So there are more spoken varieties of language in the world today that do not have, there are more spoken varieties than written varieties. There are languages that are spoken today that are yet to have their written, documented orthographical forms. And then your ability to speak a language, listen and speak a language does not automatically translate to your ability to read and write that language. So you see, the written language is more complex. In terms of complexity, I'm talking about complexity now. Spoken English, spoken language is very simple and is very informal. You can learn how to speak Yoruba when you stay among Yorubas and you listen to them regularly. But to read and write Yoruba, you must be trained in it. It's a more complex skill. If you doubt it, try and write Yoruba the way you speak it, or try and write Igbo the way you speak it, or attempt to pick any material written in Hausa and see if you can read it because you are Hausa. You must be trained. So the written language is a more formal and complex aspect of language. It's more formal, it's more documented, and you need to acquire it. You need to learn it. You need to learn how to read and write. Is that you are a Yoruba speaker, an Igbo speaker, a Hausa speaker of a language. Very good speaker does not automatically translate into your ability to read and write that language. So you now see that in terms of complexity, spoken language is easier, spoken English is easier, is more informal, it's very simple. You can listen and then change your style of speaking. You can listen and get information that you respond to. You can listen and respond intelligently, respond automatically. That's spoken English for you. But written language is more formal, is more complex, is more systematic. You need to settle down and learn it. Okay? It's not innate, it has to be acquired. What is innate is what you are born to be able to do. A child, for instance, by listening to the parents and the adults around him or her, can begin to speak a particular language. And that's why if you see, if you meet a Nigerian couple who stayed in France, for instance, and had their children there, the children automatically begin to speak French when their parents might not be able to speak it, because they have that innate ability to acquire spoken language. Children have it. But as you grow older, your ability to acquire spoken language reduces. But you have to teach children how to read and write a particular language, because the written version of the language is more deliberate, is more systematic, is more formal, is more complex. Somebody will say, which is better? Is it spoken language or written language? Well, some people will tell you spoken language is better because You can transact business. You can communicate immediately. In the past, they will tell you that for spoken communication to take place, the participant must be present. But because of technological development, that does not hold anymore. You know, for instance, you can communicate via the telephone and you may be talking and put it on voice. Meanwhile, the person you are talking with is in another continent entirely. And in fact, these days, you can talk with somebody in a different continent, in a different country through WhatsApp video. You see, like Timothy is in Oshogo. You say you're in Oshogo, right? And we are talking now. We are talking, you are not writing, but you can see what technology has done. And we are present now with each other via technological innovations. So spoken language ordinarily is believed to be very effective when the participants share the same location. Like now, we are sharing the same technological location now via Zoom. So we are communicating via speech. Okay, but written language goes across time and space. It goes across time and space. Right from day one, before technological innovations came up like this, like the Zoom software, WhatsApp, Facebook, what have you, written language, if you're going to write a letter, you have to write a letter, code your information, and post it, maybe to a different continent or a different country. But now with the evolution of the email, if the person is not there, you can send your email address, it goes. It's written, that's written language. And then we say, okay, what are the fundamental components? When you talk about linguistic components, what are the components that distinguishes spoken language from written language? That's spoken English from written English. Now, when you talk about spoken language, we are talking about tone. You can hear my voice, the tone of my voice. We are talking about the pitch of my voice, whether it's very high or it's very low. We are talking about stress. We are talking about the volume of my voice. Talking about the volume, we're talking about stress, talking about intonation. All these are components of the spoken language. Okay? But when you are dealing with written language, you're talking about the structure, the punctuation, the writing skills, the heading, the layout of your work, your paragraph style, your body, your introduction, the structure of the letter or the essay. You're talking about that. But spoken language, you're talking about tone, you're talking about pitch, you're talking about intonation, you're talking about stress, you're talking about tonal attributes, So these basically are some of the fundamental differences. And in terms of records, in the past, people used to think, oh, it's not easy to record spoken language, but now it's easy. I'm recording what is going on today now. It's easy. It's not only the written language that can be recorded, spoken language too can be recorded. So it's very easy for us to record and then be able to transmit the information. Okay. So having said this, let me mute all of you. Do you have do you have any questions so far on what we just discussed about the spoken language and the written language? Yes, Timothy, do you have? You can unmute yourself. Unmute yourself and then.
No question, sir. No
Wow.
question.
Okay, can you say briefly what I just talked about? Let me know if you followed clearly. Just briefly, can you just briefly summarize what I talked about? Did you jot down anything when I was talking? Of everything I said, can you remember and just say one or two things of what I said? We're talking about differences between spoken English and written English. In fact, spoken language and written language. whether it's English or Yoruba or Hausa or whatever, because we are dealing with spoken English, and that's why I focus on spoken English. Can you just give me a summary of what we just talked about today?
You said spoken English can be recorded, while written can be recorded.
Oh, what are you talking about now? You are confusing everything. When I talked about the fundamental differences, I said we're looking at the differences between the first thing you must learn when you come into this course, into the class, is what is the difference between spoken English and written English? What is that difference? There has to be a difference. You must understand that, because your ability to speak a language, for those of you who are Yorubas, your ability to speak Yoruba does not automatically translate into your ability to read and write Yoruba. Am I not telling you? Is that not true?
That's true.
It's true that you can speak your language doesn't mean you can read or write your language. So, your ability to speak a language does not mean you can automatically know how to read and write that language. It's not true. If no matter how good you are speaking Yoruba, except they train you on how to read and write Yoruba, you will not be able to do that, even if you have a PhD. Is that clear now? That's why we said written language is more deliberate, it's more complex. And then what else did we mention? We mentioned about the skills. The first dimension is the fundamental differences has to do with skills. Spoken language deals with the skills of listening and speaking. Anytime you come into a lecture like this, when you're attending a lecture like this, always come with your writing material. Testimony, did you hear me? Always come with your writing material. It's very, very important, because some of the things I will say, you won't find them in the course material. So whatever you now write, you use as a form of supplementary knowledge to back up what you are going to find in the course material. Facilitation programs like this would often go beyond what you have in the course material. This category I've structured usually between spoken English and written English. You might not easily find it in the course material. It's not structured like that. In terms of skills, I said spoken language deals with listening and speaking skills, while written language deals with reading and writing skills. In terms of complexity,
What's wrong with this one?
I will have to, I don't know why. Omotolani Sholanke, you and your kids, you are disturbing my class. I will delete you.
Oh.
You have to control your children now, because when you are coming to a class and control your kids, if not, I will knock you off the class. Because you are disturbing others now. All right. Let me summarize what I said. In a course like this, being the first lecture, you will need to understand, before you start learning how to speak the language, before you start learning how to properly articulate the sounds of English and the vowel sounds, the consonant sounds, vowel sounds, before you learn the stress of English, intonation, rhythm, and what have you, you need to understand the fundamental difference or fundamental differences between what you refer to as spoken language and what you refer to as written language. And I said, if you want to look at that aspect of the course, we will start by classifying them differently. We'll start by saying, one, let's look at skills. In terms of skills, spoken language, spoken English deals with listening and speaking skills. Your ability to listen and listen intelligently, and then you now speak and speak meaningfully, effectively, and intelligently and functionally. In terms of age, the spoken language is considered to be older than the written language, because speech came into being, evolved before writing. And that's why you see in the world today, there are many languages that are spoken that do not have the written version, the orthographical versions of it. And then I said complexity. In terms of complexity, spoken language is informal, is more informal, it is simple. You can listen and listen well and then begin to articulate intelligently. But in terms of complexity, written English is more formal, it's more complex. You have to know how to encode your information, you know how to write. In fact, you even need to have good writing skills. You should know how to create an outline for your work, whether it's a letter or an essay or a short message or what have you. The skills are completely different. But we believe that in terms of complexity, the skills of the written language are more complex to acquire than that of the spoken language. And then we said in terms of users of the language, people who communicate using the spoken version of a language usually tend to be within the same geographical location, or like we now have, tend to be, I might not be in Oshogo, but you are here in Oshogo, I might not be in Lagos, but you are here, tend to be within the same geographical location via communication technology like we are doing now. You know, if not for the communication technology, like telephone, like the Zoom we are having, might not be able to meet, but we can see one another now based on these technological innovations. Written language, it is across space and time, because the communication participants in that event may not necessarily be within the same geographical space. You know, participants using literal language to communicate may not necessarily be within the same geographical location. They might be different, they might be separate. Okay, and I said in terms of the components, spoken language has to do with tone, intonation, the pitch of the voice, the volume of your voice, ability to articulate properly, auditory aspect of your work, and what have you. You talk about the sparse of speech. And then the written language, you're talking about the structure of your work, your writing skill, your encoding skills. You talk about headings, you talk about capitalization, you talk about punctuation marks, you talk about the layout of your written work, you talk about the structure of your work, introduction, the body, the conclusion. So these are fundamentally, and then in terms of records, although people believe that it is easier to record a written language, spoken language can be recorded. Spoken language can be recorded, I tell you. You know, it's not only the written version that can be, spoken language can be recorded, and the written language too. As you are writing, it could be documented, except you destroy it. It can be documented easily. You know, if you are working with your laptop, computer, or desktop, you can be typing on Word document. Before you type, you ask you, do you want to save? You save. You know, and then go back to retrieve that information later. That's the advantage. You go back to retrieve information you have documented via writing, and then you can now refer to it for any use you want to make it for. So at this point in time, I want to commend your efforts for showing up. I will set up another meeting later in the day, and I will send it to your various. I will set up the meeting maybe later in the evening, where we can meet and begin to articulate the sounds of the language, you know, based on your course material. But I want to advise that make sure you have a copy of your course material before you. If you don't have the hard copy, try and open the soft copy. So the practical aspect, we'll begin to look at them bit by bit, okay? Where you begin to pronounce some words and then begin to pronounce some sounds. We want to start that practical session later in the day. I will set up the meeting in the evening, and I will send the link to your emails. If you don't have any questions, do you still have any questions concerning to this lecture?
Yes, sir.
What's your question? Who is speaking?
Francis Gossett.
Okay, how come I can't see your face? I several times I asked you to activate your video. Yes, no problem. I'm listening. What's your question?
Not really a question. I just want a clarification. You
Okay.
made mention of listening, that is oracy skill. Why the writing one is what?
Literacy skill, literacy. L-I-T-E, to be literate. To be literate. That's why when you
The
say,
listening one is oracy skill.
yeah, listening and speaking, oracy skills. Not only listening and speaking, oracy, or I call it oral English. Oral has to do with your mouth and what you utter from your mouth. You know, your oral cavity is your mouth cavity. So when you listen and you speak, you are dealing with oracy skills. Okay. And that has to do with spoken English skills. Then when you read and you write, you are dealing with literacy skills. And that's why when you call somebody illiterate, when you say somebody is illiterate, when you say somebody is an illiterate man or an illiterate woman, it means they cannot read or write. write a language. It doesn't mean they cannot speak. Oh.
Okay.
If you go to the market now, you see market women who can communicate with you in English. They will listen to you and they will respond in English. But when you tell them to write letters now or write essays, they may not be able to do it. So they are not literate. Do you get the difference? Do you get the difference
Yes.
in meaning? All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that's just it.
You also, sorry, sir. You also made mention of GST 102. You said it's a productive skill. Are you the one taking us that one too?
No. I was trying to explain how it is structured because it's also communication skill. 101,
Okay.
although I'm the one that said the questions in it, I'm not the one taking it. We structure it in such a way that another person is going to teach you that. But
Okay.
101, the way it is structured, it has to do with the receptive skill. When you are reading, you are taking in information. When you are listening, you are receiving information, spoken information. And when you are reading, you are receiving written information. So GST 101, it has to do with receptive skills.
Okay, sir.
Why GST 102, if you look at it, it teaches you about speaking skills and writing skills. When you are speaking like I'm doing, you are producing information. Do you understand?
Yes.
And then when you also write, when you are writing, you also produce information that another person will read. So GST 102 has to do with productive skills. If you look at them, you see that what I'm saying is true. But here, we are looking at spoken English and written English. Now, spoken English skills, listening and speaking, oracy skills, and then written English skills, reading and writing, literacy skills. That's what it is.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome. When you are coming in the evening, make sure that you put your children in one corner, and then you now.
All right, sir.
Because they have become your junior lecturers in the house there.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take care. I will send another link to you in the evening. We will meet again to begin to demonstrate.
All right.
Yes, we'll do that much later. So take care.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye for now. Okay.
All right, sir.
All right. All right.